All right, everyone. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming Lachlan, Todd here to the show. We're going to be talking DeFi, in particular the XRP ledger. But Lachlan is a DeFi researcher and an expert in this space. I'm really excited to find out what the XRP community can learn from Lachlan, as the XRP ledger is now about to open itself up to a new world of additional utility and DeFi coming to it. Very exciting time to be in the XRP community because we're obviously on the back of legal clarity. We had to fight for that, finally won. Now let's get to building. And so I'm excited to get caught up to speed here. Lachlan is an expert, and he is someone who is affiliated with RippleX. You're not an employee, but you are someone who writes your own independent research on DeFi and cryptocurrencies. And RippleX has definitely shown some respect towards your work, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. Big pleasure. Excited to talk about a lot of different stuff today.
Yeah, so I wanted to get your background on how you got started researching DeFi and got to where you're at today.
Yeah, so I actually did my master's in big data and AI in Madrid. And despite studying AI, I actually in my free time did a course on blockchain just through Coursera during winter break. And it was like, damn, this is way more interesting and this is going to be huge. And it just made sense to me, like how blockchain works, why it's the future. And I joined this company named Stably in Seattle as a technical sales engineer, where I worked with both blockchain foundations to sell stablecoin infrastructure, as well as DeFi protocols to sell on and off ramp infrastructure. And after 5 months, I decided to go off on my own about exactly a year ago. And essentially, I just showed up at conferences, met projects, learned because I was genuinely interested. And I began working for various projects in Cosmos and Ethereum. And flash forward about 4 months, I met the Ripple team in February, and we talked about doing an AMM piece together. That did extremely well. And then several more months passed by. We talked about doing something more regular. So that's how I'm covering this more frequently now. And then apart from this, I basically just go to conferences, love learning stuff, and I'm mostly focused on the XRPL and EVM ecosystems. And, still working with a couple data availability projects and encryption projects in Ethereum, but pretty heavily focused on the XRPL for sure.
Yeah. And what I love to see is Ripple working with independent researchers like yourself, independent projects, the amount of money that they've given to in their grants to universities. This is the partnerships that we want to see. And I just love the work that Ripple's been doing in that regard. And then teaming up and putting a little respect on your work. Some of the best DeFi research and threads that I've seen on the XRP ledger so far. I've definitely used a couple of your threads in a breakdown presentation for my community. And so I just want to thank you for that. Now, speaking of DeFi, let's get caught up right into the action here. We see that Yearn Finance is now down 45%, a big, some are calling it a rug pull, but definitely the liquidity getting pulled out of this DeFi protocol. Your thoughts on what's taking place with Yearn Finance right now?
Yeah, I think there's not that much public info on it. I think it sounds like an inside job because certain wallets had a huge concentration of assets. DeFi is definitely still a pretty savage world. Just so many bridge hacks, so many, even I clicked a malicious link a few months ago and I'm pretty advanced in this space. So then I got a wallet guard to protect me, which I would recommend people to do. But basically no one's safe and we're still not really where we need to be. But I guess you're in finance, it's sort of hard to tell what exactly happened. Maybe that could be an issue around having certain people have too much token supply and what restrictions we have over them all dumping or exiting at once. It's not too clear at this point, but definitely is kind of illustrative of where we are with DeFi and that it's probably not the last major thing to happen in the space.
Would you suggest, as I am, that it's time to clean this space up? This is kind of the growing pains that our young, immature industry and sectors kind of going through. And so, yes, it's birthing pains of a new digital asset class here that's ready to take the world by storm. And we've had a lot of this shady activity, and we're cleaning that up right now. And this is kind of necessary.
Yeah, but also how do you clean it up? It's pretty tough because it's DeFi. It's all anonymous all over the world. So you can't force, if people had to KYC themselves, no one would do that. A lot of people are against all this stuff. So, and these projects are just so hard to understand that to really do thorough due diligence yourself, it's just not that realistic to understand how year-end finance works on the back end. It's extremely complex. So audits help with this stuff, but even audits aren't perfect. And even then it's hard to tell which, audits are like the most legit and thorough. So um, definitely we're going to move towards a more regulated industry, and there needs to be higher standards, but it's also just pretty tough given the whole nature of it.
Yeah, and speaking of audits, I know that the EVM sidechain to the XRPL just went through and completed another audit. We absolutely love to see that. We're going to get into that in a second. I wanted to ask you though, what's your favorite use case for DeFi that you've come across so far?
Yeah, so I'm a big DeFi degen. I love like swapping assets, liquid staking, all that stuff. But I think the most like actual immediate use case is payments. Like Ripple's spot on with that. It's just I got paid by someone in the US and it cost them $75 to wire transfer me the money to Canada. It cost me $17 to receive it. And then I paid a video editor in Panama and it cost me 1 cent over Polygon to send them money. And it took like 5 seconds versus 4 business days. So payments are here right now. Other stuff like derivatives and all that's very powerful, but the amount of people, like the barrier to entry with DeFi is kind of high because you need to get money on your wallet. You need to actually like learn how this stuff works, how to have the native token and pay. So payments for sure is the most immediate use case, and that's a huge industry itself.
100%. Speaking of Ripple, speaking of being over the target, you had such a great conversation with David Schwarz, CTO of Ripple, and one of the 3 creators of the XRP ledger. What was your biggest takeaway from that interview? I thoroughly enjoyed it.
He made the good point that while I like getting excited over new DeFi protocols on that and all that stuff, he mentioned and brought back the point that this is actually solving real use cases and problems for people around the world, because there's about 1.4 billion people unbanked and without access to financial, services. So not sort of losing sight of that, and that, blockchain is really helping these people is pretty massive. And obviously Ripple with payments helps that. But that kind of just, brought me back from all my DeFi degen sort of thoughts. And he made a really good point.
Yeah. And I want to go back. You mentioned something that's so important. This is decentralized finance. And so we have to remember that the regulators, although they're going to come in and give us the rules of the road, hopefully in the United States eventually here soon. But even when they do with these decentralized protocols, we still have to conduct our own due diligence. And in this new decentralized finance investment opportunity, it gets difficult to do that. Now, many folks came into the crypto space, picked up some Bitcoin, got some Ethereum, and then all this DeFi craze happens, and folks see headlines, 80,000% time wonderland. I mean, how easy was it to call that was eventually going to go bust? And like you said, even on Yearn Finance, one that was more respected, one of the top platforms, you really didn't know where the yield was coming from, right? And the old saying of if you don't know where the yield's coming from, you're the yield. Well, maybe that was the case here. Maybe that was part of it. But I think it's going to be interesting. And to your part, you mentioned something about a wallet guard. Is there any other tips that you would say to protect us and to conduct our due diligence on these DeFi? Because we know that it's going to be coming to the XRPL too. We saw all the issuers bring in a bunch of scam tokens to the XRPL, and that's what happens with open source permissionless technology. So how do we protect ourselves through that wallet that you mentioned, wallet guard, and then other things to look out for when doing due diligence on DeFi?
Yeah, so I would definitely highly recommend getting Wallet Guard, or I think there's another called Mint Defense. And essentially they tell you what you're actually doing. So if you're on Uniswap, you kind of know what you're doing. It's all good. But it's just so easy to click a malicious airdrop link or go to a fake website, or say a Discord gets hacked and they create a fake website and trick you. It's just not really worth the risks. So that's a good first line of defense, just to have that, because it will warn you in the 1 in 1,000 chance that you could have your wallet drained. Beyond that, it is pretty tough if you're not deep in this industry to know what's real and what's not. Because even myself, I see all these projects saying we're a next generation layer one using renewable energy and proof of stake consensus to blah, blah, blah. And like, what does this actually mean? It's just like people throw out a lot of terms in crypto that sounds like futuristic and like it's hype market because everything's going up. But at the end of the day, you need to sort of think through like who's actually working on this project. Are they anonymous or not? Or are they a reputable team that's executed before? Do they actually have like a good ecosystem? Do they have developers building projects? Do they have users? What is this actually solving? So I think that like that is pretty tough for the average person because unless you're going like pretty deep on this and know how everything fits together, there's just a lot of stuff going on in crypto and it's tough. So being friends with people more advanced or having people you can talk to definitely helps. Getting good sources of information which you help people with your show and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that's sort of just in terms of like not buying pump and dumps or scammy projects. I would just be more scrutinous, and then with actually getting hacked, definitely get like wallet guard or something like that. And in terms of like private keys, I think the amount of time someone will drive actually get hacked, like wherever they store their keys, isn't that common, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah. The old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? And to your point, there's probably going to be some scam ad giveaways, maybe the Brad Garlinghouse ones that have been floating around that are going to be running on this interview when we air it. And so, guys, no, if it sounds too good to be true, no one's going to return you your money. And I've actually, Lachlan, this is so unfortunate. I've had to now tell folks the disclaimer that I'm not messaging anybody on any social media platforms just to secure, because I get so many impersonators and it's just such a pain. We try to block and report them as fast as possible. So if folks want to get in touch with me, they can go to my website, zachrector.com. They know that. And if they want to get in touch with you, Lachlan, let's plug, where can they find you right now?
I was going to say, it's kind of funny, like you're getting impersonated. That's when you're doing a good job, I can't wait till I get impersonated the first time.
Yeah.
As long as no one gets scammed. So Lachlan, Alex, Todd on Twitter.
Okay.
And then I'm starting to plug my Instagram a bit just because I post crypto stories as I travel and my lifestyle. So right now I'm in Turkey and there's like massive inflation here. But then I have a cruise down to Brazil and going to conference. So kind of more lifestyle crypto stuff there too as well.
Definitely got to find something else to do during the bear market. Sometimes we got to put the crypto away and go live life a little. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. Now let's get right on into the XRPL. This is what our audience wants to hear. And what I am so excited for, like I said, there's always going to be some bad actors coming in and taking advantage of open source and permissionless technology. But our ecosystem has grown so strong from everything that's been thrown at us that we've kind of been hardened, battle tested. And so if we conduct proper due diligence, and my hope is that in our ecosystem, we will see legitimate players flourish on the XRPL. And so I wanted to ask you, how do we get more issuers on the XRP ledger of issued assets? As everybody now knows, you can issue assets on the XRPL, and we've seen that we've gotten substantial issued assets so far. And we're starting to get more stable coins. You mentioned that you came from Stably. That was an interesting project, what they did. But in your opinion, how do we get more legitimate issuers of assets on the XRP ledger?
Yeah, so I think asset tokenization is such a massive industry that people are starting to talk about it more, and it's just adoption with like banks and all them. Like it's really slow, and I bet as the next bull run comes about, suddenly when crypto is a new thing again, banks are going to announce that they've been exploring all this stuff and like they want to get that attention and free marketing. I think that's definitely going to help and bring in a new wave of adoption. But we have projects like Sologenic, who I was actually researching today on the XRPL, making it really easy for like brokerages and other companies to offer tokenization services to people. I think that'll help bring on more assets. As well, the whole ruling of XRP as a commodity definitely helps, because if you're looking at alternative blockchains that allow tokenization and bringing assets on chain, they're not necessarily ruled as a commodity, which makes it more worrisome for a bank who has all these stringent checks to comply with, because these institutions that would issue assets have like huge like due diligence processes and regulatory hurdles that they need to comply with. So having like the XRPL has a commodity on it. It's one against SEC. It has all these institutions and this essentially network effects. Just makes it a lot easier for them to say yes, but they're not going to say yes like when the market is down and no one's really talking about crypto. Some will, the smart players will, but really, I think we're going to see like a lot of traction in 2024 as the market rebounds, which at least historically it does every 4 years around Bitcoin's halving, which is April. And I think that's going to bring them a new wave of adoption. But ultimately, just looking at where we are in crypto, like we're so early, it's like 1997 with internet. So really, like it's not going to be next 3 months sort of thing, but the potential is immense, and there's a lot more coming in soon.
Yeah, I've been telling my audience it's the perfect storm here with basically legal clarity and additional utility coming to the XRPL on top of us entering the next bull run. It's a great spot to be in. Now, these amendments that are coming, I think this is going to be part of helping legitimate issuers and more stable coins coming to the XRPL. Two in particular that I think are going to play a pivotal role is going to be the Clawback Amendment and then the DID, the Digital ID Amendment 2. Your thoughts on those two amendments and how pivotal those are going to be for the XRPL?
Yeah, so the clawback was pretty similar to freezing in the sense that, it's like kind of like a safety defense in case that's going down on the XRPL. I don't think it was like groundbreaking by any means, because already you could freeze assets, but essentially allowed them to be clawed back off of the ledger, which is good in some situations.
Yeah.
So that's more another regulatory, compliance thing for institutions interested in XRPL. Like it's kind of like makes it easy in case something goes wrong. So it's easier for them to say yes to issuing assets on XRPL. But it's not like revolutionary in itself, in my opinion. The DID is very interesting. I was actually writing about that today. I'm probably going to cover that in December. Now, the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, began in 1994, and they global standards on what we should do for the web to move it forward globally. They issue like proposed standards, etc. They've issued standards for DIDs where people own their own data, and that could be for my own name, it could be an organization, it could be a lot of different things, but it's also portable between different blockchain networks. So the XRPL supporting this means that I could issue my own DID on the XRPL, and then that's portable over to Ethereum or elsewhere. So it's not necessarily competitive in rivalries between blockchains. It's collaborative, and it's in line with the W3C to move the web forward, where me owning my data or whatever I want to own and uniquely prove it on chain is sort of the next evolution of the web. And that's going to be possible on the XRPL, where we can create these ourselves.
Yeah. I think it's going to be absolutely massive. A lot of folks, let's be clear too for the audience, you cannot freeze or claw back XRP. This is only for issued assets. Okay. So like Lachlan already said, we already have the ability to freeze issued assets. The clawback amendment and that feature will be for issued assets as well. So there is no way to freeze or claw back your XRP. Is that correct, Lachlan?
Yeah, correct. And one thing is like one example they gave is that say I issue assets and then I get hacked and the attacker takes my private keys. I would want to claw them back so I could issue them under a new wallet. Like freezing the assets wouldn't just be good enough. I'd want to claw them back once they gain control again.
Yeah.
There's some more examples. The nuances aren't that important, but the distinction that XRP is excluded.
And like you said, it's nothing groundbreaking. It's not as exciting as the AMM, which we're about to talk about, but it's critical for getting these regulated institutions that need to be able to comply with, Bank Service, Act and all these other regulations. They need that ability and feature for their issued assets. Now, let's talk.
Also, sorry, one thing is that I heard there's a lot of pushback on it, which I don't really understand because like this already exists on other networks like Ethereum with like USDC, etc. And if everybody wants all these regulated assets on the XRPL but doesn't want any sort of safety precautions, it's just like not that realistic. So that's just sort of one thing to add on.
Yeah, 100%. Now let's talk about this AMM. On all of the other AMMs, for the most part, they're on layer twos of Ethereum and these other networks, and that's kind of what we've seen so far. Do you know of any other layer ones that have an AMM built into them, other than I believe the XLM now does?
I actually don't know any that have it built in. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I dropped an XLM video this morning, and people in the comments were already telling me that they already have AMM. I didn't know that. I know that XLM and Stellar follows closely behind what's kind of being developed in the XRPL. And through their Sorabon smart contracts, they're looking to bring smart contracts to the layer one. So that'll distinguish XLM from the XRPL if they end up getting that through. But this is, to your point, this is going to be really the first layer one AMM available.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty interesting because there's like, I think there's, my old quote was that there's like 800 decentralized exchanges on DeFi Llama, but I think now there's like 900 or 1,000, and which is crazy. And they all have like minor differences in like architectures, or like, they use vote escrow tokens or other interesting DeFi stuff. But at the end of the day, they're fractionalizing liquidity, and it's just way more efficient to have a protocol-wide liquidity pool for each asset pair, which is what the AMM does here. So it's very, very interesting.
And the ability of the XRP ledger to settle in 3 to 5 seconds and built into that layer one DEX, right? We already have the DEX, and I just actually read your thread last night on the CLOB DEX that we got in the payment engine, another incredible thread. But the AMM makes this DEX more efficient, right? And that's what gets so exciting here. It's built into layer one, and you have the ability to get out in 3 to 5 seconds. So this helps reduce impairment loss. And this is one of the big considerations here. And I'm just so excited because I think that through the clawback, we get more legitimate issuers on the XRPL. And then with the AMM, I think that we have an exciting opportunity where we get to watch maybe Ripple. As they announced their new partnership with Uphold, they're going to be kind of sourcing liquidity from Uphold. I see Ripple becoming the one-stop shop for liquidity. And now through the acquisition of Medico, they can provide the custody as well, which is a critical kind of the final piece. The final brick is what the CEO of Medico, Adrian Treccani, said at Swell. The final brick is going to be that custody. But with this AMM, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. With these other AMMs, and in general, when the AMM's getting built up, that liquidity pool, that pairing between two currencies or assets is getting built up, that's when there's some vulnerability because folks can pull that liquidity out, right? Just what happened with Yearn Finance, right? They can pull that liquidity out. What I'm excited to see, though, here with the XRPL AMM is the potential for Ripple and their on-demand liquidity partners to really just kind of move over some chunks of that ODL flow to the AMM so that that liquidity pool builds up rather quickly, but then is sustained. Do you see any scenario in that regard?
Yeah, I'm not too sure how they're going to initially provide liquidity into these pools. I'm sure that they have a very good answer to that. I just haven't researched it yet. There's no way they're not going to put, good care and thought into that, because that's pretty critical. And as you might be aware, like a common attack in blockchain is like flash loan attacks, where someone does a big trade which imbalances the pool, so like a mismatch in price, and then takes out a loan or something like that. It gets a little more complex, but that's going to be a lot harder here. There is that weakness initially, but I think because there's just so much liquidity because it's blockchain wide, I think that's also a lot harder to pull off. You need a way more liquidity to execute a flash loan attack or anything like that. And I don't even know if that's possible, because with the AMM, there's like federated consensus and canonical ordering, which I talk about in my AMM article, which prevents like MEV and front running. And that might make it harder for that sort of stuff to happen. I guess a little technical, but yeah.
My thought, in its course, is just me being a speculator, definitely guilty of a little speculation, is that you would get an issuer, say SBI Holdings. They love XRPL. We know that. Maybe they want to come on in here and they want to issue the Japanese yen on the XRPL, and then Ripple or somebody else wants to issue US dollars, and basically that they could really ramp up and sustain a liquidity volume on an AMM. And I just think that it's going to be a critical piece of kind of that one-stop shop for liquidity that they're building out.
Yeah, I could also just like text them and ask them and let you know. I don't know if there's like the answers out yet, but it's pretty interesting how they're actually going to do it, because
Well,
that liquidity will need to come
that's
from
why I
somewhere.
asked you, Lachlan. I was trying to dig to see if you had any source of intel on that.
Just hasn't come up in convo, but I mean, we're friends. I can just ask anytime. So I'm sure the answer is very interesting. I can send you a message once I know.
Yeah, appreciate it. Now, I did want to ask, there's a few other, just a few other little things that are happening in the XRPL ecosystem. Wanted to get your thoughts on the Zahao smart contract blockchain. Your thoughts on the decision to not bring smart contracts to the layer 1 mainnet, and what are you excited to see for the Zahao ledger?
Actually, I'm not too well versed in this topic, unfortunately. I know Zum that rebranded as Zahao, but I haven't really followed these developments, so I wouldn't be able to comment to, give a great answer here.
I appreciate that. From what I've heard, there was just concerns that the bringing it to layer 1 mainnet right now could potentially kind of constrain the mainnet ledger. That's what I've heard from, kind of David and some of the other developers. But I think what I've seen so far between Ripple and the independent validators, right? Ripple only runs one of the validators on the DUNL list right now. So they're working with all these other validators. And what I see is a great community effort to make sure that we are testing everything. We're running it through audits before we go live on mainnet. And I love to see that, because although we have to be patient to get our AMM, we have to be patient to get some of these additional utilities. When we get them, it's not going to expose or break our ledger. So your thoughts on just how Ripple has been working with the independent validators to be, conducting proper due diligence and testing before we bring things live on the mainnet?
Yeah, I actually haven't followed this as much either. I know that they used to have two validators and they reduced it to one, which is really good, because a lot of people, mistakenly think that Ripple owns the XRPL, whereas they're one of 36. And I do know that they care a lot about what people think. Like even the AMM needs 80% approval by validators. So definitely a very collaborative effort. The most recent developments, though, like around Zahao and this sort of stuff, I just unfortunately haven't really followed. I'm covering more like the DID. I'm about to cover NFTs in depth and stuff like that.
In the EVM sidechain, right?
Yeah, that's very interesting too.
So I did want to talk about that, because I know you've already put out some work on that, and this is so exciting to me. The Zahao ledger, that's great. But what I like to see here is this EVM sidechain, where you can essentially just bring over anything that's been built on Ethereum on over to the XRPL and settle in XRP. To me, that is going to be a significant use case and utility. If Ethereum can't really get their systems working much better, the alternative of XRPL DeFi is going to be presenting itself during this next bull run. And when folks don't even really have to change any of the code or the smart contracts that they wrote, but they can just move it over to the EVM sidechain on XRPL, that's going to be a fantastic utility and alternative for them. So your thoughts on how big of a deal this EVM sidechain is for the XRPL?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go to DeFiLlama.com and you look at chains, you'll realize that I think 9 out of the top 10 chains are EVM compatible. And it just continues. Like a lot of people say Ethereum hasn't won the blockchain race. And it hasn't won for everything. You're going to need every sort of chain. Like that's why we need the XRPL. Solana also seems to have a great community, even though I don't follow them much. But at the end of the day, Ethereum has a massive community, so many global events. So the fact that developers can now deploy on the XRPL sidechain and connect directly to the XRPL mainnet, plus all future and present other sidechains, is pretty big, because not every blockchain is good for everything. Ethereum might be great for DeFi, XRPL is great for payments, hopefully for other stuff as well, which it will be. But at the end of the day, even just the mainnet on XRPL isn't good for everything. So we need these side chains to reduce congestion, stuff like that as well. So this opens up a lot of room for innovation as well, because we have countries building on the XRPL now. We have institutions. So these can all, go through the mainnet and connect between side chains in the future, which, yeah, I can't really comment on like what this unlocks because I think a lot of the stuff we can't really fathom yet in terms of innovation and just what even the future of crypto looks like. But it's really good, groundwork, and it definitely is going to help a lot of growth in the next bull run.
Yeah. And I think that the XLS 38D is going to play a critical role in that too, the CrossChain Bridge. It was formerly called Federated Sidechains, but that's coming to the XRPL too, and that's going to tap us in with everyone, right? So we already have this EVM Sidechain, incredible option, alternative, and utility there, because we see there's already hundreds of thousands of tokens on top of Ethereum, so many smart contracts that have already been written. We don't have to change anything. You can just slide it over and settle on the EVM sidechain. But then with the cross-chain bridge, XLS 38D, that's going to tap us in with all these other blockchains as well, too. This interoperability that's coming to the XRPL, I think, is going to be kind of industry leading in a way. The ability to tap into all these, only other comparable would be probably Ethereum.
Yeah, definitely. And that's just awaiting approval as well on the 80% of validators, I believe. But that's going to make it, pretty easy to bridge assets. I actually met the PeerSys team at Stanford Blockchain Conference. They just had a Ripple shirt on. Really cool guys. I said hi and realized I was writing about them at the same time.
Nice.
By very smart people out of Barcelona developing this bridge. Yes, Ethereum has, bridges between all their layer twos and stuff like that. There's obviously differences between both. XRPL stands out in certain ways. Like we have all these institutions. It's a lot cheaper, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, this market's massive and there's room for all these different use cases. And yeah, this bridge is a big deal. Let's hope it gets approved.
Well, and the problem, though, to your point, is it's been an incredible vulnerability for so many chains, right? And so, like I said, I'm very excited to see that they're running this through stringent testing, audits, and we've passed pretty much with flying colors. But remember what happened with the NFT XLS 20, right? They found a significant, I don't know if it was a bug or a flaw, right up when it was supposed to be passed, right? And so it was kind of a last minute fix and adjustment that they had to make, and they were able to get it done. And so far, the XLS 20 for NFTs has worked pretty much flawlessly on the XRPL, and that's what we love to see. Now, another amendment, Mayuka from Ripple just put forward this week, is the NF token escrow. So the ability to actually escrow, include an escrow feature with your NFT as well. So say you've tokenized a piece of real estate or maybe a car or any real world asset that you could think of, right? And the ability to escrow that, similar to real estate transactions that we see today, right? Escrow accounts are very common for getting deals done. So your thoughts on the NF token escrow, and then your thoughts on the DID. You already alluded to some of your thoughts on it, but I think it's going to be a major, these two will be a major deal for the XRPL.
Yeah. I actually hadn't heard about this escrow thing, but it's kind of just showing like how far ahead.
It was just yesterday, so I can't blame you. Like this, it's happening so quickly these days, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're just building out good infrastructure to support, everything from traditional finance, which is great. It's kind of funny because I've been in crypto a year and a half, which isn't that long. And I wasn't around like last bull market and everyone was talking about XRP and all this stuff. Like a lot of this stuff's kind of on the newer side to me. So I come in, which is good because I come in with kind of like a more objective view of how everything fits together. And the fact that like the more I look into all this stuff, like the more I am like, wow, these people actually are extremely intelligent and leading the way in all this stuff. So escrow is kind of just another example.
Right. And I don't know about you, but this is what gets me so excited for, not just the XRPL. In the XRP community, we want to talk about getting all the money. We're not going to get all the money. And I've always said, we just need a little piece of the action and we really accomplish something incredible. But for me, it's the tokenization of the real world assets, the traditional financial instruments and assets, and the derivatives, and all of this getting tokenized. And I'll tell you why it makes me so excited. It gives us an opportunity to level the playing to level the playing field through a commodity-backed international monetary system that settles on distributed ledger technology, whether that's the XRPL, whether that's Ethereum. It gives every country, every person, every business entrepreneur around the world the opportunity to show up on a level playing field here, and we can bring forward our value, our resources. Like I said, the financial system at the core returns and can potentially return to a commodity-anchored international monetary system that's settling on DLT that allows countries to kind of get away from the abuse of the reserve currency that I think that the United States has kind of demonstrated over the past couple decades. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I agree. There's definitely more competition with tokenization now. We have other blockchains like Polymesh that also have good technology, but I don't know too deep, like, what moves these other competitors are making. Not competitors because they're like all kind of doing their own thing. But I presume that they might get some progress with a few institutions in one area of a certain country or whatnot. But XRPL like has a global brand name with massive relationships, and I think that really helps because at the end of the day, there will be power dynamics. There's always like the 80-20 rule in everything in life, and the XRPL and Ripple is just so far ahead. So having this distributed ledger that institutions, countries, banks, whatever can just tap into is going to be important because you want to reduce friction for them. If other people are doing that, it's a lot easier for them to say yes. If it's been around a while and they're making it easy to use, it's also reducing friction. And at the end of the day, like these banks kind of know this stuff's the future, and the more that they, ignore it and delay, kind of the more risk they're putting on their own businesses. So there's definitely going to be some FOMO once the major names start, coming out again in 2024, partnering with these sort of projects.
It seems to me like they're starting to unveil some of these partnerships. Like every week, it's another new partnership with Ripple. It's another new corridor fired up. What I love to see, they just announced this. They had On Afric speak at Swell. And just through that partnership alone, they have access to 40 countries within the African continent. And so like you said, this is the real, like, actually changing the world. Not just talking about something. I was thinking earlier when you were talking about all these companies that threw out the term, oh, we're going to leverage AI. And it was really, relatively speaking, just a term that they threw out to kind of pump their stock. They have no idea how they're going to leverage AI, but it was the hot phrase of the day. And so I think what we're seeing right now, to your point, Ripple is working with some of the biggest banks, institutions, and governments in the world to really hold the incumbent's hand and really not, they are going to be disruptive, but they're looking to actually do things in the right way. And that's why I respect what they're doing, along with working with our independent validators as well. A truly decentralized ecosystem. And my hope is that we can return to some sort of commodity-anchored international monetary system that settles on DLT, and whether you're just a small-time business entrepreneur or whether you're a small country, you can bring your value, your resources to the world in a new financial system that's truly democratized and actually inclusive. Not just throwing the term out, but actually achieving that. And I think that Ripple's well on their way. So your final thoughts on what is going to lead the way for this next bull run? Is it going to be utility? I tend to think that we're still going to have a little hint of speculation as well. Your thoughts on this next bull run?
Dude, I am trying to figure that out right now. Just texting smart people like, hey, what do you think is going to happen next bull run? I mean, I think there's a lot of areas that are going to pump. At the end of the day, everything's going to pump. A lot of stuff's going to crash as well. I think layer twos are going to surge a ton because Ethereum gas fees are going to be crazy. And there's going to be a transition to layer twos, but that's more Ethereum ecosystem. I think Web3 gaming as well, but it's still not where it needs to be. Like games aren't truly fun yet. So there'll probably be a pump there and a crash. Tokenization as well, but still we're not really where we need to be. So finding that next narrative is sort of hard. Liquid staking derivatives is a major area. But there's just so many different areas that are going to do well. Like, yeah, utility will also be big as we see more real world partnerships with institutions that's going to support the XRPL. An issue for XRP as well has been that people sort of associate XRP with just Ripple and not the XRPL. So that's why getting more attention over to the NFT community, the DeFi, is going to be really important. And that's definitely going to happen as well. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of stuff's going to pump in overall in the market. And I'm kind of figuring out where that money is actually going to flow myself, doing a lot of research. But utility and definitely is going to, have a huge growth as well.
Yeah. I think that Brandon Berry, the head of Ripple Payments, just said that the second wave coming to crypto is going to be off of utility. And David Schwarz, in your interview, he highlighted how he appreciates that not all of the attention is on Ripple anymore. Folks are starting to understand what's taking place with the XRPL as well. So that's a beautiful thing to see. And for me, I think that we're in a great spot. Like I said, with legal clarity here in the United States, additional utility on the way, we're in a great spot. And one last thing before we go, Lachlan, where can folks find you? Once again, you got your Twitter. We'll link that up down below. Is there anything else where people can find you at?
Yeah, I think Twitter's pretty good. I have some blog stuff, but I think it's a little niche. It's kind of like pretty, I don't know, ZK stuff or stuff. So, but multichainmedia.com has like my portfolio, just other works I've done covering cross-chain bridging, zero knowledge technology, stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll link that up down below. And if you go to his Twitter, he has his link tree, which has that the blog there and everything. So that's it's just an absolute pleasure to have you on the show here today, Lachlan. I appreciate the insights, and I am going to be looking forward to all the other threads, very valuable content that you've been dropping. So I highly recommend everyone follow you to learn more about the DeFi space, not just for the XRPL, but for some of these other chains as well. So thank you for sharing your insights today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me. Chat soon.
Thank you, everyone. On the way out, if you guys could do me a favor by smashing that thumbs up, and if you're new here, make sure we subscribe, hit that notification bell. Everything else can be found at my website, zachrector.com. Thank you so much.